As we've been hearing this evening about how one of India's most beloved singers, Lata Mangeshkar, has been cremated in Mumbai with full state honours. Mangeshkar, whose voice was the soundtrack to hundreds of Bollywood films, died earlier today, aged 92. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and stars of the entertainment industry attended the funeral, where large crowds gathered to pay their respects. Pakistan's PM Imran Khan tweeted that the subcontinent has lost one of the truly great singers the world has known. Affectionately known as Didi, Lataji's extraordinary career spanned more than half a century, and she recorded thousands of songs in 36 languages. Now, 2 days of national mourning will follow the funeral, and the national flag will be flown at half-mast throughout the country. But to find out more, I'm joined by Sahar Zaman, a newscaster for the Times Network based in New Delhi. Good evening.
Good evening, Talat. Good evening to your viewers, your listeners, and you. And indeed, this is a very, very sad day, but also a time when her work, Lata Didi's work, and her voice has managed to put everyone together across the world.
Indeed. And it's hard to describe what kind of place Lataji holds within the South Asian diaspora. I mean, does she have a Western equivalent, do you think?
I'm not so sure because it's not just about one country. It's actually the subcontinent and the diaspora of the Indian subcontinent across India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, huge following in Africa. So it also goes much beyond the diaspora, beyond people who understand the language that she sung in. So I don't think there is an equivalent anywhere in the world. Even if you try very hard looking for it, you wouldn't find one.
And what's been the feeling in India following Lataji's death?
We've all been tracking her health because she was admitted to hospital for the past 20 days or so. She had tested positive for COVID, and then that led to complications, and she was in ICU and ventilator support for a while. There was a brief recovery that we were told of in her medical bulletin. Yesterday and day before yesterday, but then it suddenly went downhill again with a multiple organ failure. So everyone's been, of course, very, very closely tracking health updates and praying very hard for her long life. But this time it was the final trip to the hospital.
And of course, yes, very sad indeed. And she was cremated earlier today. What can you tell us about the funeral?
It was something that was followed across the country, and even in Mumbai, in the city where she was living and where her final rites and her final journey took place. There are COVID restrictions in place, but none of that could really be managed because people passionately stepped out of homes. People who weren't stepping out of homes for the past so many weeks and months and working from home made it a point today to specially step out. Of course, it wasn't like it was. I mean, the streets were, of course, thronged by people. But despite COVID restrictions, that couldn't have been controlled much, but it was still very, very, very disciplined and very respectfully taking that journey. Everyone in Mumbai footed that journey from her home right up to the funeral ground, following her hearse, and it was really very passionately followed and observed, and a huge outpour of emotion that we've seen across the country. And through the day, her songs that have been playing, and it's also been a journey through the history of India, because here's someone who had an active career for almost 8 decades. That's 80 years, and that's much beyond the life of India as well. for someone who started in the 40s and stayed and ruled the airwaves through the 50s, 60s, the golden era, the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the first and second decade of 2000 as well. It was also about tracking the history of the country through her music for someone who's been through the decades in the evolution of the country, in the evolution of our politics, connected from right from the first Prime Minister Pandit Nehruji right up to the current Prime Minister, someone who's been connected right through the decades and been extremely active and loved throughout. I mean, the nation who has loved her the past 80 years. It's been incredible. It's been a day of very, very strong nostalgia, and for everyone losing a part of their own life. I mean, we've all lost a part of our life today.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, she also had a connection with your great uncle, Talat
Yes.
Mahmood Saab. And tell us any stories or any anecdotes on them working together. Do you know any?
One or two that I've heard, and also when I was listening to the tributes today, I realized that that generation, people of the golden era, had a very different connect, a very different association. Today, of course, there were people much younger to her, of course, stalwarts and singers and actors and legends in their own right. But there was this absolute reverence while reminiscing about her, while talking about her. But for people of her generation, of the golden era, and her colleagues, such as my granduncle, whom you mentioned, Talat Mahmood, there was immense respect for each other's skill. But it was also a different relationship because they were colleagues, and they were starting out in a new country, in a young country, in trying to establish the music of a new film industry post independent and having similar struggles. There was a lot of respect for each other's skill. She had a lot of respect for my granduncle's pronunciations in absolute command in the Urdu language, which was the most widely sung language in post independent India at a time when we were establishing our Indian film industry and Indian film industry music. And him, of course, having utmost respect of her skill in managing to sing about in every possible emotion that one can imagine. There are instances, nothing in specific that I could recall, but more about, of course, how rehearsals were done in studios and how recording used to happen in those days, which was about single take recordings with a live orchestra, and if anything that goes wrong in between, you can't cut and paste and copy paste. That would mean a retake right from the start. So those were different days. They were there was it was a different kind of an association, a different kind of a work culture. But that is what has made them also great. I mean, legends who will always stand the test of time.
Indeed, absolutely. Well, Sir, thank you so much for joining us and paying tribute to Lataji. And I'm going to play a nice track which your great uncle, had sung along with her. This is Jab Jab Phool Khile. It's a beautiful track, I'm sure.
Beautiful
And
pick.
indeed, from the film Shikast. So here we go. Have a listen to this. And in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Talat.
जब जब फूल खिले जब जब फूल खिले